Good afternoon, everybody. I mean, the news narrative today has kind of been focused around a couple of things, but I'll get to that. I'm going to start with Canada. All right, why is Canada big mad these days? Well, first off, we kicked their ass in hockey. It's the only thing they got because fuck maple syrup. But the Canadians seemed really, really worried about Trump's rhetoric on the 51st state. And that's all it is, right? It's just rhetoric. But the Canadian people, most of them are communists, so they have no sense of humor. So, every time you find out that the Canadians are upset about tariffs or this is shit I've seen on X. I really don't follow Canadian news. I really don't care about Canadians as a whole or their country. But Trump did say he was going to put tariffs on it, and I think we talked about this in an earlier video, but it's really got a lot of them upset. I just don't think they realize. Some of them are cheering Canada not buying American products. I don't really think they understand that Canada is really on the brink of being a third world nation. Without American products, American subsidies, USAID being one of them, we kind of buy Canada's oil as a how do I put this? A generosity, right? We don't need to buy anything from anybody. America does have enough natural resources to stand on its own. But that, and we also got the USA Canada game coming up tomorrow. I will be watching that. I love hockey. And watching America slap the shit out of Canada again would be fantastic, especially if Trump's there, right? As he did call. What's that, Cam? Okay. That if Trump does show up, again, the 51st state rhetoric, the tariffs, it's really got Canada's panties in a twist. Seeing how is no more. And I've even seen, and don't get your news from X, okay? Do your own research. As I've spent some time as a terror on X, Canadians really don't grasp the concept of a lot of things. But
X is where people take their rage out.
But it's just hilarious because they don't understand. They want to say, oh, Canada is going to be annexed because Trump's a dictator, or oh, we're hurting America by not buying their whiskey. First off, supply and demand. If Canada isn't going to buy our whiskey, hey, we might get it cheaper here. I'm okay for a good cocktail. All right. But yeah, don't get your news from X. But if you want to see me be a terror on X, especially to Canadians, because it is fun, at from _a_kitchen, they're not really grasping it, and it's just too fun not to fuck with them. Especially when it comes to hockey, that's all they got. But as far as the oil subsidy goes, I regained my train of thought here. We don't need it. I see people saying, oh, America gets a deal on Canadian oil. We give it to them at 25% less than anything else. Well, we don't need it. We don't need anything from them, to be honest with you. And they can't seem to understand that. Trudeau being a commie bastard anyways, a lot of them calling Trump Hitler or a fascist or a dictator, or we're coming after Canada next. But I believe it was Trudeau that froze bank accounts on truckers protesting. He outlawed many, many, many firearms in Canada, taking away the right to protect themselves in any way, shape, or form. But moving on, we'll talk about Ukraine a little bit because that seems to be the topic of the day. Zelensky and Trump throwing jabs at each other. Everybody calling Trump Putin shill, or he actually works for the Kremlin. These are people that actually don't read anything or understand anything, and absolutely tend to take things out of context, as the left has often done, especially in the mainstream media. But I can understand what Trump is saying. Doesn't make it always right, but I can understand it. Calling Zelensky a dictator. Okay, And that's because he is trying to get, or he did get rid of elections in the country of Ukraine. But everybody's saying he's a popular war hero, and Ukraine needs Zelensky. Well, no, Zelensky needs America. He's a welfare child. He needs American tax dollars, which, in my opinion, he shouldn't get any tax dollars. No country should get American tax dollars ever. Yeah, America can prop themselves up, supply the entire goddamn planet as we hand out money to every country in the world. All these countries need to learn to stand on their own. But coming back to Zelensky getting rid of elections, what is he afraid of? If he's the most popular president in Ukrainian history, quote unquote, then have elections. We had elections during the Civil War, right? Lincoln versus McClellan. So McClellan was a top general in the Union Army during the Civil War. He ran against Lincoln in Lincoln's second term during the Civil War. We had elections. Yes, Lincoln did some other shit. He did, get rid of habeas corpus temporarily, and we will be getting into the history of some of that this Sunday. But McClellan ran against Lincoln on the premise that we should stop the war itself. Let the South retreat into the South, give up the land, let them be to their own devices. It's kind of like what's happening right now, and Lincoln needed a victory. He hadn't really won any victories in the Civil War yet. In that time, Grant and Sherman finally took Atlanta, and that's what Lincoln used as his motto during his run there during the Civil War and got him reelected. But it could have been a whole different thing. If McClellan had won, he would have left the South to their own devices. The U.S. would have been divided. It would have been two separate nations. Who knows? Who knows? That's going through a time machine and stepping on a butterfly. But during World War II, we had FDR versus Dewey, right? And this is in 1944. Okay, you have Dwight D. Eisenhower getting ready to invade Europe on June 4th, 1944, which is when it happened. But they were waiting on an election to see if Dewey was going to win, FDR was going to win. Love or hate FDR, I am not a fan, communist bastard. But there was still an election taking place during a massive war going on. Okay, the Americans hadn't quite invaded Europe yet, but they were fighting in Africa. Eisenhower's getting ready to invade on D-Day, but it all coincides with the election. Okay, so if we can have elections during major conflicts in American history, why can't Zelensky? What's he so afraid of? Now, I have no love for Russia. I have no love for Ukraine. As a matter of fact, we should just say, pay us back our fucking money. If you're so strong, fight your war on your own. That's just me. But, have your election. If you're the most popular president in Ukrainian history and the people want to keep fighting, they'll vote you back in, and they'll keep voting you back in until you win this war. But you're not going to. Russian tactics, they're not great. But as Lenin said, quantity is a quality all over of its own. It might have been Trotsky. Caleb, look that up. Look up who said quantity is a quality all of its own. It was a Russian. I think it was either Trotsky or Lenin. But the Russians...
Joseph Stalin.
Stalin said that. Stalin said that. Okay, that makes sense. So the Russians have bodies to throw at wars. They don't care. It's just a never-ending meat grinder that continues. So, negotiating a ceasefire, losing a little bit of land, that's all wars are won these days. It's not, a surrender where there's a formal ceremony, generals hand each other their pistols and call it good, and they go both their separate ways. That's not the case anymore. And if it wasn't for the American tax dollars, Ukraine would have got stomped. But I don't think Russia wants the whole country. They just want a warm water port in Sevastopol, or however that fucking town is called. But yeah, there's something to hide there. And again, I'm saying I don't have any love for Russia. I don't have any love for Ukraine. I just don't think American tax dollars we shouldn't be the world's bank, let alone the world's police force. So, again, moving on. It seems to be popular as of the last week that I've seen. Now, the Democrats, the communists, which are just Democrats, saying that the election, Trump's victory, was stolen. What were the odds? It was no more than 4 years ago they were saying Trump was trying to contend the election. Was he saying some shit? Yeah. Was it right? Yeah, probably not. But, some things add up, some things don't. But they wanted to put him in jail for that. Sedition, they said. Right? Remember January 6th? They called him a treasonous bastard. They wanted him locked up. But now all the left is saying, oh, it's an illegitimate election. He didn't win. It was stolen. So are all those people going to go to jail? Are those is this sedition? Is it treason? By definition, I think treason is a military action in which someone rats out to a foreign adversary during the time of war. That's treason. So it would be sedition. But why is it okay now and not 4 years ago? Or herd immunity. If they take, without vaccines, we can't have herd immunity, as RFK is just saying some certain things, especially, there's a lot of people pissed that they don't want those welfare checks. RFK doesn't want those welfare checks going to soda and candy and junk food, which I couldn't agree more. If you're really starving that bad or you need help that bad, you'll take rice and beans, right? You'll take whatever you can get. You don't need Sour Patch Kids. You don't need Coca-Cola. We've seen people at the store actually use their food stamps to buy steak and lobster, as I work 60 hours, 65 hours a week, and I'm happy if I can buy enough groceries for the week. Because I don't qualify for food stamps. Not that I'd want them, but I don't qualify for it. So, that's going to be an interesting development over the next week or two. How they're going to try to spin this election denial, how it's okay for them, because that's how communists think, right? And especially if they lose on an argument, they just change it. I see it all the time on X. If I'm just absolutely being an absolute terror to somebody that's pissed them off to no end because they can't get to me, they just block it. So this will be a very, very interesting development. I'm hoping to hear. Homan did say that they did identify the leaker for the ICE raids in Colorado. It's going to be really interesting. We've all suspected it's probably the FBI, but we'll see. As the news comes out, I'll bring it to you, my opinion, and we will go from there. Everybody have a good afternoon.